right, sounds good. How's everyone doing? Good, okay. All right, I'm Charles. I'm the lead product designer here at SDF, and I've been here for about 6 years now. So I want to talk to you guys today on just the high-level on-chain experience that users kind of go through. We'll kind of go through some design principles. We'll talk about the user journey as well as what's next and what is exciting to me. So first, we have be user first, right? And so with design, we hear this a lot of user-centric design. One of the things that's kind of funny is we have this term KYC, right, which is know your customer. And by know your customer, in this case, I want us to think about not just the personal details, but who is your actual audience, right? So who are you building for? The first is really non-crypto natives, right? So these are users who may have bought crypto through Robinhood, through Venmo, through PayPal, or other Web2 applications. And they might not necessarily know or care that your product is built on crypto rails, right? And that's also why there's been such a push for crypto ETFs as well, because it allows these users to have exposure to crypto assets without the burden of custodying those assets as well. And so for them, even the smallest things like changing the phrasing from owning a JPEG is better than minting an NFT, right? Like users might just not know what those things are. So it's important to keep those things in mind. And so next we have crypto natives, right? And so these are people who are aware that your product is built on, on blockchain as well. And it's really interesting because these people actually have the same incentives as non-crypto natives, right? They want better interest rates, they want better user experience, and they also want accessibility across different devices or platforms. Now, enterprises and organizations, right, we might think of them as larger black boxes, right, that move kind of slow, but that's not for a negative reason, right? It's because they have a larger impact, they have a larger user base, and so the things that they might care about are actually more control, scalability, and security as well. And it's also important to note that organizations, just like SDF, right, are made up of, crypto natives and non-crypto natives as well. So they have their own incentives in there. So finally, next we have be consistent, right? I get asked this question a lot of like, hey, how do I make this design better? I would say that good design really just boils down to consistency, right? It could be the small things like padding, fonts, colors, things like that, to larger things like using the same components across all of your different products, right? And so actually, we have a pretty small design team at SDF. It's me, myself, and I. And so over the last 6 years, we've actually been able to maintain consistency throughout all of our products by using a design system. So you can kind of see here a collage of some of the components that we use in our design system today. And we also have light mode baked in. Sorry, that was probably pretty bright, but and I just kind of want to, so here's an example, right, of how we break down, say, this modal, right? On the left, you have the component or the variable classes, right? The things that we call these input fields, these buttons, badges, button groups. And on the right, you see the styling classes that we use for our colors. We use it for font sizes, things like that. Now, the first design system looked something like this, right? It was really rudimentary. It was more based for web, and so it didn't work well with products. We only had a few colors, and we did not have dark mode. Next, the version 2, right? We added more color ways. We added more, steps between the different colors. We also added different variables for buttons, and we also made this a little bit more skewed for products, right? Not just building websites and things like that. We still did not have dark mode. So fast forward to today, right? This is the current design system that we use, SDS version 3. What we've done is we've decoupled the fonts from sizes. We've also added a variety of different colors, such as accent colors, and we have dark mode, right? So that's cool. This is a real-life example of how all of this comes together, right? So, some of you guys might have heard the lab talk before this, right? But we just rolled this out recently. Shout out to Jane, G, Avetta. But you can go to lab.stellar.org and kind of see how all of these components and colors and variables come together for a unified experience. And we actually use this across, Freighter, Lab, and also SDP. They're all being pulled from the same design system. Finally, we have transparency. And so transparency can mean a lot of things, right? One, it could just be something as simple as having better error messages, right? For example, this is a bad example of an error, right? It just tells you that something is wrong, right? But for a user, a better way to do that is tell them an error code, give them human-readable language of why something is going wrong. Nothing is more frustrating, right, than getting feedback and you just get errors and then you're just kind of what's going on here? As well as adding actionable things that the user can do to learn more or to solve their issue. Transparency also means security to a degree, right? And so here is a couple examples of what we've done working with the Blockade team, which has been awesome. Shout out to them. And this is Freighter, right? This is our non-custodial wallet. And you can see that we've flagged different states here, right, to have better security for our users. The first one, we flag tokens, we flag websites, and we also flag transactions to show that, hey, whatever you might be doing is a malicious actor. So we want to have transparency there as well. Finally, you want to have transparency with your community, right? So this is a screenshot of our Discord. The feedback is public. You can ask questions. You can talk to people who work at the foundation. And so I think it's really important to have a space or a channel to show care and commitment as well to the people that you're building for, your end users. So next, I kind of want to talk through the on-chain journey because many of you are probably building something that fits within this flow, right? So initially, we have the on-ramp. How do you get money from traditional banking rails on-chain? We have the wallets that show your on-chain balances, the ability to send, show your history. And then we have dApps, right? Doing things with your on-chain balances, such as lending, swapping, borrowing, and then finally off-ramps, right? And so it's really important here to note that what you're building is not a siloed experience, right? There's a before and after state that these users, your end users, are coming to. And so when you're testing your products or doing, gathering user feedback, it's really important to look at this journey holistically instead of just your product as well. So be able to test, be familiar with other products in the ecosystem, and we try to do as much testing there as well. Some wallet basics, right? I'm just gonna kind of go through some of you guys. Most of you guys are probably familiar with these, but I just want to give little tips for each of these that might help your end user. So for onboarding, you want to make sure that it's very clear, step by step, what the user is signing up for, as well as saving the recovery key. For sending, you can add little tips such as 4 previous sends to make the user feel better about sending assets to an address that they've sent previously. For receive, make sure it's easy to copy or show a QR code for in-person transactions. Swapping, make it clear which token that you're getting for what, the exchange rates, the slippage, the fees, things like that. Your balances, right? Ideally, you show one unified currency. And if, everyone here, we are for a global audience. So it's not just about dollars, right? It's about local currency as well. So if you can highlight that and just have that in the settings for the users, that's going to end up being a much better user experience. Now, for on and off ramps, making it easy, showing the time it takes in terms of business days to get your funds from banking rails onto the blockchain, onto your address. History, showing a list of your past wallet transactions. Link them out to a block explorer, Stellar expert, right, so that they can see more details. If it's an error state or a failed transaction, show better states about why that particular transaction failed. And recovery as well, right? Making sure users know, hey, you probably should keep this safe and secure. And I think like in crypto, this is the part that everybody's kind of like afraid about, right? It's like, oh, you lose your keys, you lose your funds, right? So make sure that it's not too scary for the users, but also have them acknowledge what they're actually doing and keep it in a safe place. And we'll kind of talk about how we can build a better experience in a few slides. Next, we have dApp functions, right? So again, I'm just going to kind of run through, give a couple of tips. So for lending, making sure that it's clear how much interest you're earning, that it fluctuates, why it fluctuates. When you're borrowing assets, putting up other tokens as collateral, how much that will take and how much that fluctuates as well. Swapping, again, making sure that slippage is clear, like how much tokens you're exchanging for another. Liquidity, supplying assets to a liquidity pool. These typically come in token pairs, so you're supplying both sides of liquidity to the pool. Identity. Identity, I think, is something that's a little underexplored in the Stellar ecosystem. We have Sorbonne domains. Shout out to Enrique, who does incredible work in the community. He's also done Expo and helped with, or he's also worked on the wallet selector as well. But I think it's, such a huge piece for us to look at a name like Charles.xlm. Obviously is a lot better than a G address, right? So little things like that, if you can integrate those into your app, would be better for the end user experience. Social. Most of us, I think, or at least personally, I think DeFi is a big part in why a lot of people participate on chain. But I also think there's a social aspect here that's underexplored, right? So seeing the trades that your friends make, seeing who you interact most with on chain, that type of information has network effects, right? Governance. We think of DAOs a lot of the times, right? So being very clear about what your voting share is. Are you able to delegate your votes to another member in the DAO? And also ownership, right? So it's funny, even before smart contracts, we had Lightmint, right, which was NFTs on Stellar. And now that we have smart contracts, we can do so much more. I really want us to think about, ownership is such an integral part of blockchain, but the next step of that is like, what can you do now that you own something, right? What are the actual incentives for owning? It could be a friend's picture, it could be art, right? Like things like that. It's like, what are the actual implications? What are the downstream effects of actually owning things? So what excites me next, right? I think right now is such an exciting time, right? Stellar has been around for 10 years. We have smart contracts now. We have all of the pieces that we kind of need to take the network to the next level. And the first thing is passkey wallets, right? And this is not great phrasing, so I should take my own advice, but it's technically just authentication via passkeys. And so those things look a little something like this, right? You log in with a PIN or biometrics like Face ID, right, to sign in and sign transactions connected to your wallet. Now, I went to Tyler's talk, and his talk was on passkeys and something called policies. Now, I didn't even know this, right? I guess it hasn't been around for that long, so I was learning with you guys. But policies blew my mind, right? Policies are essentially rules that you can attach to a transaction. They're essentially like limits, right? So you could have a backend have a policy that you can install, and that will allow that backend or that provider to do things on your behalf without any malicious intent, right? Because the rules are set prior to you agreeing to them. And so I think like a good like traditional finance example of that is tax loss harvesting, right? So if you guys are familiar with like robo-advisors and having assets there, like they trade on your behalf, but you're not doing anything, right? But you're also feeling very secure that your funds are safe, right? We can do the same thing with policies. And when you combine that with passkeys, you get some pretty crazy scenarios, right? And the crazy thing is that these are not future features. These are live today. And so that is super, super exciting to me. And yeah, there's much to be explored there. So next, DeFi on Stellar. I think DeFi will be a large part of bringing the next wave of the masses on chain, right? And so right now, here's a view of our TVL on Stellar. Now, this doesn't include the 420 million roughly of TVL from real world assets on Stellar. And so I think the thing here about DeFi is that the incentives are here, right? People want access to better financial opportunities. They want to retain the value of their assets, and they also want to grow them sustainably. And so that leads me to my final point, right, is bringing users on chain. Is really all of this involves you guys, the things that you're building, the things that you guys are building communities and platforms around. We have, again, all of the building blocks today to build the future that we want to see. We can provide global opportunities. We can help people around the world with better blockchain tools. I think the thing about blockchain is like sometimes it feels like the cool feature is that it is blockchain, but I like to think about it as a way to amplify the things that we currently do now, right? And so how can you get involved? If you guys are building something on Stellar and you haven't applied for the community fund, please, please do. This is a reminder that it closes on October 20th, and so you can apply to $150,000 in lumens for your projects. The team is incredible. They are very responsive and very helpful for you to get all the resources you need. So please make sure to check that out before the deadline. If you want your design roasted, come to the live feedback session tomorrow, where Bruno and I, we might roast or more lightly toast your designs if you want. It'll just be very casual. Come with anything, any questions about design, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. And finally, if you have any questions, again, do not hesitate to email. Do not hesitate to reach out on Discord, right? Like, we're available. We're here for you guys with anything and everything. So thank you so much. And if there's any questions, I'll check the Slido, but feel free to raise your hand as well. So thank you.